Have you ever thought about starting over and wondered how that could possibly work? Could you move the occupation you love and begin again? Our guest today not only did that, she embraced a new niche, which would make her a perfect story for you, our listeners and viewers. She's a second career realtor from the Washington, D.C., or from Virginia and the Washington, D.C. area. While there, she built a successful business as your transition partner, primarily focusing on serving seniors and their families. She advocates for one's life transition, not just their housing transition. Every Tuesday, you can hear her own Transition Tuesday video blog. In late 2021, though, Cathi and her husband made their own senior move to the Dallas area where they would prepare for retirement. Ha ha. While starting all over again, she also chose to help other agents become transition partners and to serve seniors with, as she says, excellence and empathy. She's created a mastermind group that meets 8 times a year. Doesn't sound much like retirement, does it? In early 2024, she began to focus on mentoring other agents to enhance their level of service to seniors across the country and in different industries. She also launched an ebook, Serving Seniors with Excellence and Empathy. Cathi and her husband live in suburban Dallas with their cute little Westie, Gracie. When trying to pretend she's retiring, she's reading, coloring, and sneaking into consignment shops. She and her husband, Ned, love cruising. Cathi, you have been described as vibrant, energetic, yet humble, sweet, and kind, which you are.
Well, thank you.
What drives your passion for serving seniors with excellence and empathy?
I came into real estate. I love this little piece because it makes it so clear. I started my pre-licensing course the same week my Medicare card came. So I'm clearly, it's actually probably the third or fourth career for me. And I'm second generation. Both my parents were realtors. My brother's a realtor. My cousin's a realtor, and my niece is a realtor. So it's the family business. And when I came in, I came from almost 50 years of working in the nonprofit and human services sector. My big passion for all those years was really doing the best to serve the needs of high need, high risk kids. And that also brought into play their families and a lot of dynamics. And I understood just how difficult life transitions that aren't your idea can be. Even ones that are your idea can be really stressful, but the ones that aren't your idea, they can be so stressful. So when I started into real estate, I made the real decision that my work needed to be mission-based, not just sales-based. I didn't know how to do that language because I'd been supporting all kinds of different nonprofit missions for a long time. And I add to that is that I just mentioned my mom was a realtor for about 30 years. She was old school realtor, white glove treatment. And when at the end of her life, she was diagnosed 6 years before she died with small cell lung cancer and really wasn't supposed to live more than about 2.5 years. And this is one stubborn and determined woman. I realized the apple didn't probably fall very far from that stubborn tree. And she just kind of refused to believe that this was going to get her. And the week before she passed away, my father and brother were going to go down to the National Association of Realtors and Society of Industrial Realtors meetings in Orlando. And my father said she couldn't go because she couldn't walk. So getting on a plane was probably a big of a stretch. And so she called a friend of ours who was their travel agent and tried to book a train. That is how determined this woman was. And the weekend on this particular Friday, she just couldn't get out of the chair. And she and my father were supposed to go about 5 hours away to one of my cousin's daughters was being married. And she was just furious. She was determined she was going to go. So I got the call that the decision had been made to put her into a hospice home, and it was intended to be respite. But what they didn't understand is that she had metastasized and she had brain mets. And so they called me to come in. I was in DC. They were in Columbus, Ohio. And so, we'd been there back and forth. It wasn't like I was the first time I'd been around. But yet I had much trepidation to walk into her room in the hospice home because of how hard she'd been fighting all of this. And so I walked in and she looked at me, and with big brown eyes, one of the very last sentences to come out of her mouth was, "They took me from my home."
Oh.
And that has stuck with me. And I've had several clients for whom that has been an overarching theme in my work with them, is that they went either kicking and screaming or by doctor's orders or whatever. And so to be able to engage with seniors has just brought joy to my life, because I know that I'm making a difference. And one of my good friends from my faith community and I were talking about my work at one point, and she looked at me and says, "You're not doing anything different." So that's why the seniors piece, because at heart, I am very mission and very service driven.
So your slogan, serving seniors with excellence and empathy, beautifully does capture your approach. But where did that guiding principle come from? Where did those words come from?
They came from understanding that for me, being an excellent realtor isn't enough. That in order to share the story of a senior or a first-time buyer or a buyer that's looking for the backyard with a swing set, we need to enter into their story and to become part of, even if it's for 6 weeks. Most of my clients I hang on to for a long time, but just because we become friends in those 6 weeks. Yet becoming part of their story allows me to listen to them differently and to serve all of their needs. You talked originally in your transition partner has been my tagline since I started in real estate, because it is a transition. Yes, there's a real estate transaction, and yeah, I need to know all of the requirements and how to talk through the contracts with them and make them feel comfortable in that transaction. But that's this much of this much. And so that empathy piece, especially working with seniors. I have something that I think one of our colleagues on one of our network calls gave me the inspiration for it. I call it the grandma gut check. If I am referring somebody to work with my senior as a vendor or as a contractor, would I put that person in the same house with my elderly mother or my grandmother? It's very different to work with folks that are exploited a lot, who are taken advantage of a lot. They don't trust very easily, yet they want to trust most. And so I just find a lot of joy in that, entering into their story and helping them cross a path into a different kind of life. And the other thing that just occurred to me to include with this is, when I'm talking to those first-time buyers and those buy-up buyers, they are so excited about this process and they can't wait. And if it's a buy-up buyer, they want to get their house sold so that they can move on with their life and really find their forever home. When you're working with a senior, many times they've lived in that house for 30, 40, 50 years. And like my mom, it's so much part of their identity. And so it becomes a loss. It becomes something really much more difficult to enter into. And so there's a lot more care, I think, that's needed in working with a senior than with a 35 or 40-year-old that's so excited to get their first new place.
Well, absolutely. There definitely is. And as you've said to me, and they deserve it, right? They deserve the extra care.
Seniors deserve the best. That's one of my little taglines that wanders around a lot.
It is. So what are some of the most common challenges in serving seniors? Some of the things that their families face during these transition periods, and how do you guide them through them? We know because it's not only just the senior themselves, as it is their families and or a spouse. So it's much more complicated.
It
And
is.
definitely, I think it would also be fair to say that this type of move, as opposed to working with first-time buyers, you always say, oh, their dad goes on the inspection with them and so forth. But certainly serving these situations, many times you'll deal with the children and it's a much more complicated thing. So what are some of your challenges?
The first is to make sure the senior remains at the center of this whole process, because it's easy to have folks kind of come in and try to take over. Now, I am a recovering alpha daughter, and I'm the one that came in and told my father what to do in many situations. And he said it was wonderful for him that they always joke they were waiting for me to be able to tell them what to do.
Sure.
And I now know I would have handled things as my father, many years later, declined and passed away. And my stepmother was his college girlfriend. And so we had the dynamic of that.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have those dynamics. And I am always telling folks that are care coordinators and placement people, it's really different when there's a second marriage in late life. So be sure you're all thinking about that one too, because it can be confusing. Who's really in charge? Because it's, at the point that Marjorie moved in, it was her home and not our family home anymore on this many levels. Anyway, it's almost like, tell me your question again, but what are all the challenges that we can have?
Sure. What are the most common challenges?
Right. The first is the stuff. Even before the families, it's the stuff. And sure, the biggest challenge is with the accumulation of stuff like I have, and I'm guessing knowing you a little bit, you probably have it too, is brown furniture, china, Waterford, Yardrobe.
We do.
All this,
we do.
All the pieces.
Yeah, the Lalique, yeah.
Right, that we enjoyed collecting for legacy. And you know what? Ned and I don't have children of our own. We married in our 40s, but my nieces and nephews have no desire to have any of it. And so it disappoints the parents that the kids don't want the stuff.
I know.
It's confusing. And there is so much brown furniture, china, Waterford, and all the collectible, really good stuff that it doesn't hold its value anymore. And so it's a challenge. And one of my friends, Matt Paxton, who used to be on Hoarders and now has Legacy List with Matt Paxton on PBS, wrote a book. He's a senior move management national leader and wrote the book, Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. How can we help them keep the memories? Because that's what it is. Almost everything that I have as a collection in this house is something somebody gave me, and it has meaning attached to it. And so to let go of it is really difficult. And, you just said we moved from the DC metropolitan area, Northern Virginia, down here almost 3 years ago next month. And we had a rule. It had to earn its way onto the moving van. Oh. Yet the things that we kept are the things that are really special and important to us. And I have two bookcases in this office, and they are all filled with those things. So keeping the memories, there are now wonderfully tools and resources that we can use to help them keep the memories. There are the digital picture frames where we can take pictures of their stuff and have it go around and around on the system. There's artifacts.com, which is a cloud-based way to tell the stories of all the little things that you got. Cute one is that when Marjorie, my father's widow, passed away last year, they sent us boxes of stuff that had to do with my dad. And
that's nice.
It was. And we discovered for the very first time, my family and I, that my father had a high school ring. Oh, we'd never seen it before because Marjorie had it all those years. So
Oh,
it's
she
one of the,
did. She'd
she
had it
did.
since high school?
She'd had it since college. He gave it to
Oh,
her in college and
oh
she
my
kept it.
goodness. Oh my
And
gosh.
so, so that is one of my artifacts, is to be able to tell that story so that my father's grandchildren have knowledge of that kind of stuff too. So there's ways to do that. I digress.
No,
And
that's
then,
great.
so that the stuff is huge. The fact that we said before, people live in their homes for 30, 40, 50 years. They haven't done a real estate transaction in 30, 40, or 50 years. Now, maybe they've refied, so they have a sense of how different it is. But to try to explain multi-page documents, and in California, you take the prize for having
We do.
the most documents to a real estate
We
transaction.
do.
It's overwhelming to them, and then we want them to e-sign everything.
Yeah.
And see, for me, that is not a requirement. If they want a wet signature on it, I will drive 40 miles each way 8 times to be able to accommodate that.
Sure.
So that's a challenge. It's just the overwhelm of it. And then there's the families, which you alluded to a little while ago. And, I think that the two things. One is I spent the first 45 years of my life in adolescence, and my master's degree in psychology is in developmental psychology, and I've worked with families since the 70s. All of the family dynamics that we walk into a door with our clients have been going on since birth. And we need to kind of have a sense of what role we can play and how we carefully do that, so that they can be the family with as many dynamics as they want to have, and we can be a guide for them and a support for them in this part of the journey, and introduce things not in the jargony professional language ways that you and I know, and we can speak to each other in shorthand.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Okay.
rather find out what they know, find out what they don't know, and help them to want to know what they don't know, and still a sense of curiosity, so that they aren't making bad decisions at a fast rate in a hard time. And that happens. Kids are out of town. And here's the third piece. Kids are out of town. And, I am a high ranking fan of Google. We're doing this, and I'll just say it now, we're doing this during the 2024 Olympics, because I know this will live on for a while. So less people know that that's what I'm talking about. And I have spent a lot of time while I'm watching these people fly through the air and swim like fish and ride on horses. I'm Googling who they are, so that I know a little bit about them. And Steve, that won the pommel horse competition with the gymnastics, is from Worcester, Massachusetts. Well, I lived and worked in Worcester, Massachusetts. Sure. And everybody jokes about, how do you say Worcester? And I said, so I wanted to know more, because I wanted to know if I knew of any of his family. So I love Google. I love Google.
Absolutely.
Yet that is not where you find good, high quality resources to take care of your family in a different town. You find someone like you or someone like me that knows the people in the senior related industries, that knows who's the best person to go to for the information that you need to make the high quality grandma gut check referrals to placement coordinators, to senior living communities, to home care or home health care, whatever's needed, to senior move management, so that you can all work together as a team to come in and take care. And when the daughter lives in Ohio and the mom lives in California, it's really difficult, because both of them feel out of control.
Right.
So it's being the voice of reason, the voice of curiosity, and to really come from the acronym I use in talking with seniors and communicating with them is CARE. Make sure you have clarity. Be sure you're paying attention, not just to what's being said, but who it's being said to and how it's being said. Watch them in their environment, not just on the phone. Respect. Seniors get very little respect. And empathy is the E. So CARE, and really be there for them. And that's what I think when people say to me, when I talk about this and people say to me, oh my God, I wish I'd known you when, because we didn't know, it's to ask the local resources. Please don't rely on Google. And so those are the challenges. The stuff, the families a little bit, the complexity of the transaction, and just the fact that seniors don't get treated very well, so that they get really stressed out. And that's why the empathy is so important.
And don't you agree that we have and I'll say we, I don't hope that you and I don't, but don't we have a tendency to, if not physically, in our minds, we put them in a corner and we talk, right? Right. We talk about them. Now, my mom doesn't let us get away with that. And she doesn't miss a thing. We'll think that we can talk and she won't hear us, or she won't know what we're talking about. No chance. She knows exactly. But in many cases, and I know when my dad when we put him in a board and care home, he was almost 99. And I laugh about it now, but I said to them, don't you put my dad in a rocking chair in the corner and treat him like he's old. And they laughed like, sure, yeah, sure, okay. How old is he? It doesn't matter. Don't treat him like an old man, right?
Correct. Because it is always ageless, and always, ALL, separate word, WAYS, in always ageless. And something like that isn't allowed with anybody.
Right, right. And we shouldn't treat them that way. And we're going to talk about that some more. But we're going into the area of stereotypes associated with aging. Let's talk about the book that you and I both love and relate to, Stage Not Age. I talk about it all the time, and I would love for you to take the lead on this. Let's talk about, what does that really mean? For me, it like opened my eyes to, yes, that's me. Yes, that's exactly how it should be. So what is Stage Not Age?
Well, Stage Not Age is looking at not how old we are, because if you meet one 72-year-old, you've met one 72-year-old. If you meet one 82-year-old, you've met one 82-year-old, because we are such a diverse population. People say it starts at 55. At 55, I was running a child welfare agency with 90 high-risk adolescent boys. I was not old. I was a little nuts, pretty stressed out, and couldn't speak full sentences, but it was for a different reason.
It wasn't because you were old.
Not because I was old. I was trying to keep up with the kids with the least of the problems, the state, anyway. So it's a but for some folks that are 55, they are ready to retire and to go live a quiet life in the woods, in the mountains in Colorado, and or at the beach, and let the world go away. So the diversity within that 55 to, well, given your mom, I'm going to call it 103, age range is enormous. And the thing that I like best about the book is that she divides our lifespan into 5 quarters. Now, yeah, that's basic third grade math. There's only 4 quarters. Anything about football, there's only 4 quarters. Yet she has added the 5th quarter of being the 100 plus, because of her understanding. And my eyes opened about this as well. For you and me, there aren't going to be many more people that live like your mom to be over 100, because we are in the end of the 3rd and into the 4th quarter ourselves. But for our kids, they are going to have a whole lot of people that live that long, because of the changes in technology and health and all the things that keep us living longer. So what does longevity mean? It means quality of life. Age is a number. And if you look at the longevity, the length of time we live, definition, and health span, we have opportunities, both as seniors ourselves, we have opportunities that when even my mom, who was a young 78 when she died, excuse me, she was 39 when she died. She just rolled over in her grave. So that was her theory, though, that she was 39 and you don't talk about age because I am who I am. And she taught me that one really well. Yet, how many people say to me, my God, I didn't know you were that old. It's amazing. So there are stereotypes about who we should be, what being in our 70s means, about what being in our 80s means. There's a lot of carryover stereotypes that we have that even when I talk with seniors that are looking at selling their homes and going into a assisted living community, to them it equates to going into the home and, like you said, getting stuck in a wheelchair in a corner, and be left there to die. And that's not what those communities are anymore. They are oftentimes a ticket to a much healthier, much more connected, much more vibrant life. And so that whole piece about age has as many misconceptions as it has conceptions. And so let me go back real quickly to the 5 quarters. And we know that the 5th quarter is overtime. It's 100 plus.
Yep.
The first quarter is like what we think of as starting and growing up and getting into a career, getting through from birth to kind of getting your first job. The second one is kind of figuring out where you are in life and getting yourself planted and optimizing things and parenting and being able to deal in life with a lot of transitions,
right?
And being able to have the executive functioning to do that, if in not a leadership role, then at least an informed role. Mm-hmm. And then we get to the 3rd quarter, which I love, because the 3rd quarter, now this is fuzzy math, goes from 55 to 85. And it's where we are. And it's what I love is because the words that are used, and I need to use the paper because I don't have them all in my head in order, repurposing our life. Okay. So we get to 55 and everybody says we're supposed to be getting ready for retirement. What else do we want to do? I shared it. 65, I became a realtor. I sort of wanted to do it a number of years before and it didn't work out. And I said, if I got to take this turn, it was an unplanned opportunity, as they say. I'm going to give this a shot. And it's in my blood. I have 2 parents that did it. And it's a wonderful industry to be in many ways, especially in a service
the service piece. Side of it. Yeah.
Right. It's a renaissance time, and renaissance is rebirth and revival. It's starting over. It's having new energy. It's for some people, and I have a group that you're a member of, it's called the Seniorpreneurs, so did you really want to be an artist? I have a friend in Baltimore who started doing art in her mid-60s that she'd always felt called to. She was a leader in the early maternal and child health care and very early child development areas. She's a maven in that area because we work together on several major national projects. But she's an artist that's unbelievable. And she finally just said, this is what I'm going to do. And did it starting in her 60s. She now has shows all over the place. Sidepreneur, which is kind of the seniorpreneur piece, to start something on the side. So maybe you want to do some writing. Maybe you want to do some grant writing. You want to write the great American novel. You want to do a garden and teach other people how to garden. You want to do pet sitting, whatever that is. That's something that you've just always kind of wanted to do, but you were too busy when you were doing all that other Q2 stuff.
And I think another part of that also is for people like some of us who like to still be busy or do something that now, and I would say maybe we can put it in the sidepreneur section, is that we're going to have opportunities to do things online.
Yes.
Right?
Oh,
we can go on a cruise,
yeah,
and my husband will sit and read, and I will find some kind of a side work that I can do. I can read to people online. I can do voiceovers online. I can sell something online. I can create things on Chat GPT, right? All those things. So sidepreneur, and I've heard you use another word in your work, which is seniorpreneur, which I'd love for you to touch on in a minute. But sidepreneur, I think, is a whole nother thing. I have a friend in Indiana who doesn't have anything to do. She's bored. I said, Becky, you have an amazing voice. Go online and read books read books, right? And then she's on what, Audible, I think. And people get paid to read books on Audible, right?
Right.
Or other things. So go do that. She's an actress. So do that. So I think that's opening up a whole nother thing for people who are
absolutely
in our area.
And I'm going to keep the second to last one to last and say experimenting, because that's what you're talking about. We get to try new things. Number one, that were never invented when we were in high school or college, or even in our 20s and 30s. And so we get to try new things and go on new kinds of adventures, and see the world in a different kind of way. And the last one is continuous lifelong learning. It is a passion of mine that we are always trying to find out, how does that work? We're staying in curiosity. I'm a podcast junkie. So anytime I'm in the car, I'm listening to a podcast, and it doesn't necessarily about real estate. It's about professional development, it's about personal development. It's about exploring new subjects that you know what I ordered last night?
No,
I ordered a high school American literature textbook, because I want to go back and read those stories again, but I don't want to go buy all the books.
No.
This allows me to have it in one place. And so it's coming next week, and I'm going to go back and revisit. I loved 10th and 11th grade English, and really understanding the meanings and the symbols and the stories and the understories, all of that stuff, revisiting that. I'm so excited. So, and that's the thing that I haven't made clear enough when I write about it is I have two coloring books. One's a Van Gogh coloring book, and one is the Old Masters. And I have a box of probably 500 pencils, colored pencils. And I will sit, and I'm not creating art, I'm replicating art, but it's soothing, and I combine the colors, and I try to get the textures right. And it's just a lot of fun. So to experiment with new things and to revisit stuff that we loved as kids. So this is a time of extraordinarily fluid and dynamic life. And yet, the other piece I wanted to introduce here, and then we can go wherever you want to go,
go ahead.
Is it's also a time when sometimes I have to go slower. Sometimes I don't have the energy that I used to have. Sometimes I have to deal with I've had both hips replaced, I have a new knee issue. All that stuff can be introduced in the way, so that while it's fluid and dynamic and fun, it also is uneven, and that we need to be aware of that and have strategies to get around it so that we can do all those other things I talked about.
In some ways, and for some of us, I like to think of actually 70 as being middle age, right? Now, except for the sad fact that I have many friends who are in their 70s who passed away the last year, but they also were sick for a very long time. So they had other issues. They didn't pass away just from being old at 70. So there's so much yet to live. I mean, and now there's colleges, you can do your classes online. My brother has a PhD, and he's still taking classes online. I said, what are you doing that for? I just want to
learn.
What just wants to learn.
Our local senior center is connected with the University of North Texas. And I don't remember it has a cute name of but it's specifically for seniors to be able to take classes and be able to either audit them or take them for credit.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. So I'll let you finish with your list. We just finished, I think, with sidepreneur.
Yes. Oh, and the seniorpreneur is folks that either want to do something brand new, do writing, do like my friend Alma to do the artwork, or they go back and do as a consultant the work that they've done, but have their own hours, that they're not tied to a clock. they're able to have it as an expression, continuing part of their identity and the expression of themselves, and a little bit money, which is one of the things
All those
about
things.
when you live, more people live to be 100, it's expensive to keep us alive, is, but to have those opportunities that mostly when our parents, and especially when our grandparents were that age, that wasn't anywhere, no, it was very unusual.
Yes, it was. It was. Although fortunately, those opportunities are available for older people also. If they're in assisted living, they don't have their own computer, they never learned how to do that. The senior centers now have those, and they have computer classes and all those things. People can sew, they can do all of those things.
And the other piece I thought about before, and just this pause gives me the opportunity, is to be able to volunteer, and to volunteer. My husband he works as a development director. He's a fundraiser for nonprofits. And he used to work at a day shelter for homeless men. And that volunteer program that worked with him, the seniors come in 2 or 3 days a week. They had the skills, the work skills to be able to pick up and do a job and move it forward at much less cost. And the seniors were really involved with the program, and so it's a mutually rewarding piece that they have the freedom of time and then are able to engage at a much higher level and be able to really support nonprofits that are trying to do God's work at very tight budgets. So
yeah, if one at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it used to be that I remember when we were little, at church, the seniors would come and stuff envelopes, but now they get to do more things, right? And there's more learning available, and all of that is a part of it also.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of people, we know, because of all of this and what we've learned through Stage on Age and our own experience, a lot of people struggle with stereotypes associated with aging. So how do you encourage seniors to embrace their own flexibility and their resilience as they age?
One of the things especially working with folks that are selling the family home and are moving to possibly a senior living community, or moving to a new regular housing community, both in your market in Southern California and in my market in North Texas, there are a lot of one-floor homes in our inventory. So people don't necessarily move as quickly into group living as they do maybe in areas where it's a mostly 2-story living and no way to make those accommodations. And trying to have them be able to see the opportunities that are there for them in this next stage, and not see it just so much as a loss. And we've both gone through training programs in our respective brokerages about engaging with people and wanting to have them focus on their why they are making this move, why they are selling their home, why they're buying a property, and to focus on the why with as much positive outlook on it as possible. And if someone is moving from Dallas to Orange County to be closer to the kids, have them looking forward to seeing and spending time with the grandchildren, and really focusing on how they can have, even though there's a loss, there's a big gain, and that they wouldn't be able to do it without making this step. And it's an easier sell for some than others. Some are just not going to see it. Yet my keeping that frame of reference is important, and it's not Pollyannish, and it's not Susie Sunshine. It's life is worth embracing, and we all have our jobs to do. And is for seniors, the job is to establish your legacy. What is it that you want to be known for? What is it that you want people to say about you? And sometimes I have talked to seniors that have struggled with it and said, and I have this written above my computer. It's actually right above my light. What is the story you want to, hang on, I'm gonna say it correctly. What is the story you want to tell about the transition that you're making?
Oh,
And
that's
so
good.
that puts it into the context of just the next chapter of the book. It isn't the end, and we're not writing the epilogue yet. It's the next chapter in your life story.
Let's talk about your move, your transition. We're in California. Everybody's leaving California and moving to Texas or Tennessee or Florida. So you were one of those. But many people here are leaving to be closer to their kids. Some of them are leaving because housing is less expensive. And by the way, their kids happen to be there. So what are the things that you see? What do those people struggle with? Because certainly being close to your kids is great, but my kids don't want me around all the time. I can tell you that. And I'm a mother-in-law, so that's another problem or challenge, I should say. So what
Opportunity.
so what do you recommend if you're in California and all these people want to move someplace? What should they be thinking about? What are some of the things that you see other people face once they've made this move?
With our move, let me kind of back up and give you a little bit of the perspective and understanding of the dynamics. My husband and I had decided 5 years ago, well, about 7 years ago, we started looking casually while on vacation in Florida. Did we want to live in Delray Beach? Do we want to move to the west coast of Florida? And then we just kept going. This is an economy that's entirely built on seniors and doesn't have, well, some of it's growing. It's growing in a way that just didn't meet our needs. And when it's hot in Florida, it's hot differently even than it's hot here. And it's 104 degrees outside right now. So it's so we then said, well, what about North Carolina or South Carolina? And we're just like, no, that just doesn't fit for us. I had a position, a remote position as the program development and grant writer for the Girls Incorporated in Metropolitan Dallas from 2012 to 2016. And my cousin she lives 2.5 miles from here. And so I would come and stay with her when I had to come for a week at a time. And I came probably 4 times a year to be on site to do the United Way report or to do a big grant. And so I got to know, and because I was doing grant writing, I was also connected with a lot of corporate foundations and philanthropic foundations and the growth of this community. And because we had the kids in programs with the museums and the colleges and universities, I understood the dynamic complexity of North Texas. And so so I understood that North Texas was growing like crazy, and that it has culture and philanthropy and art and all that stuff. And so I said to my husband about 4 years ago, why don't we look at North Texas? And for us, the beauty is my cousin lives 2.5 miles from here. And she isn't just my cousin, she's a twin, and I was the third twin. So we've been friends since I was born. And so we came down and we looked, and our plan had been to move in January of 23. And for a lot of reasons around my husband's job and around the fact that then I could be wrapping up my real estate business in Virginia. And he had one of those unexpected opportunities at work as well, where they had gone in a different direction. And so it was July of 21. And we had already had a plan. And one of the things I want to emphasize is the importance of making these kinds of plans, whether or not you're going to do them this month or this year, but to have an understanding and to have explored, like we explored Florida, and then we explored the Carolinas, and we came here and stayed for a week and explored here, that we had a plan that was supposed to happen 1.5 years later. But because we had a plan, we did 10 weeks to Texas. We got the house ready. I had all the contractors up there. We had the house ready. I listed the house. I sold it in a weekend over asking. and we'd wanted to rent back, and they couldn't do that because they had a small baby and starting a job. So they paid for our Airbnb down here, and we packed up and came to Texas. So have a plan, do the exploring. I joke with people that I wanted to be someplace less expensive, living on one floor near family, and warmer. And like I said, it's 103 degrees outside, so I might have been a little more clear on that. Yet, this is no different than in January or February up there when we have a hideous snowstorm that you don't go outside for a while. So, and you don't have to shovel it. So we had a plan. We were able to take and push that plan forward. And then the other piece is to give yourself, I've known of several of my clients and of other people's, other agents' clients who have moved into a senior living community and moved to another one and another one because they don't give it enough time to really understand. And that with our move here, to really explore and understand really get engaged with the community, to really understand who people are and why they do what they do. You can't get much different from Virginia than Texas, except maybe California. So, yeah. And so it isn't just that things are done differently down here. They've not had the experiences that I've had living in the Midwest and in the Northeast and in New England, so that I can't expect them to have. So really having the chance to get to know it and to ask questions, the same thing we've been talking about the seniors, come from curiosity, explore, find out. And with seniors, especially those that are going to be moving into a senior living community, to go visit a couple of times. You always go for lunch and dinner because the food's really good. And to go to a bunko night or a bingo night or a happy hour or whatever, so that you get to see all the different people. So as much of information as you can get. I mean, that attention that I use when I'm talking about in the care, using care and talking with seniors and communicating with seniors, that same thing when you're going in to do that. And to really understand where you're going as much as you can and give it 6 months, give it a year, and see how you can understand more and connect differently. So I think those are some of the kind of keeping it in that lifelong learning, in that exploration and experimenting. Be willing to do that, yet not. We used to have a saying when I was in the at Mount St. John, which is a child welfare agency, that every time we made a change, the state wanted us to know right away if it was effective, if it was going to work, and how can we demonstrate. And it's like, give me some time.
Right. Yeah.
I'm changing things. Give me some time for that transition. Transitions. You've got the change. You've got the leaving. You've got the arriving, and then you've got this neutral zone into which a whole bunch of stuff can fall in the meantime. And so that's part of giving the whole thing some time and allowing the process to work its way all the way through.
I heard you, and that's great advice. I heard you tell a story about some friends who, and to help me fill in the pieces, about some friends who made a move and they didn't like it and they came back to visit.
Oh, okay, right.
So tell us about your friends.
It's a couple that I know. I sponsor the trivia night at the senior center.
Oh,
a half mile from my cousin's house down the street. So I've done it because I wanted to get to know that group of people, not because I'm in there selling stuff, although I do give them a $10 ice cream gift certificate every month that I'm there with my card on the back of it. Yet, I really want to get to know them. So that there was a couple that I was talking to, and they said, they were talking about having to make the long drive home. And I said, where do you live? And they said they live on the other side of Tyler, which is like almost an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours without traffic.
And they were going to drive home that night?
And they were drive home that night. And what they've been doing is they had moved into a 55 plus planned community.
Okay.
They didn't like it.
Oh,
The houses are really close to each other, and they just felt crowded and like it was too intense. There's always something going on, and there's a golf course, and there's a pool, and there's swimming, and there's bunko, and there's the ladies group and the Romeo men's group, and there's just so much to do, but it didn't feel like a good fit to them.
oh,
So that they still own their property in East Texas, so they would come back and forth, and they had a small RV that they could pull. I'm in Texas, we have a lot of pickup trucks here. They could pull in the back of the pickup truck, and so that they would go to a campground, and so that they are of the leading people, members of the senior center, and they love it. So they were driving back and forth just to be involved. And I said, wow. And I said, it's really too bad that you didn't like that. And they said, this is the piece. We wish we had known. And they had given it a couple of years. So it wasn't like they said, we're getting out of here. And so then I was talking to them about it. I saw them 2 months ago. And I said, are you guys driving home tonight? And they said, yeah, but that's okay. They'd moved into one of the 55 plus apartment buildings.
oh,
Communities, brand new. I could walk there from where I am. Wonderful layout, but it's very independent living. They're in an apartment and they can do what they want. They don't have to do stuff they don't want. Their apartment, they said, is up on an upper floor. They have a vista and a view.
Yeah.
And it's the same 10-minute drive for them as it is for me to get to the senior center.
Perfect situation. Mm-hmm. We have just a few minutes left, about a minute and a half, actually. So let's go back to senior care and senior living, and in your experience, what are some exciting things that are coming along as far as trends or innovations in senior care that people should, or senior living, that people should be watching out for?
A couple of things. One is aging in place doesn't have to be living in a dark, dingy old house that you haven't really taken good care of for a while. That there's a lot of ways in partnering with folk in the occupational therapy and in the construction communities that can be done to make it very adaptable, that you can reach, that you can access things, that the doors can be widened, that all of that can be done so that you can stay in your home if you want to. And to know that that's a possibility. That there is also a trend that is growing to have companion housing, which is for an example of it is for a senior to have a graduate student from a nearby university come and rent a room and live in the house with them. Yeah. It provides an inexpensive way for them to have housing, and with the right kind of vetting and enough safety mapped around it, a way for the senior to have someone that's there to kind of watch over them and be there and help them with things around the house that may be too tiring for them, or maybe things that they can't do anymore. Sure. And then in terms of the housing itself, there is the new 55 plus communities. There are a whole range of them, some of them at varying levels of expense. So don't think that it's always going to be too expensive. And that if you're living in your home and you want to stay there longer, but you're having some struggles, that in-home care, not necessarily in-home health, but there is that as well. But I'm talking about folks that come in, and if you're a veteran, it's usually covered and it's really free. Yes.
That's great to know.
Some home care companies that are affiliated with the VA, it's free. That to do light cleaning, grocery shopping, helping with sorting and organizing things, taking you to doctor's appointments. And there's also a whole volunteer cohort with the village movement across the country, which is to have neighbors helping neighbors. So that there's a lot of opportunities out there. My suggestion is always talk to a reputable, somebody that you get referred to in your community, post it in a Facebook page, and somebody's going to know the equivalent of my friend Lori here, that is the one who knows everything about all the senior stuff here. I'm always referring people to her, because if she doesn't know it herself, she will get you to the best person locally with the highest quality of care.
We unfortunately have to end our time together today. I'm sorry to say, but I would love to have you back again. You're a wealth of information in so many different fields and so many things we haven't been able to talk about. So thank you very much, Cathi Coridan, for being our guest today. It's been our pleasure to have you on Always Ageless.
And it's a treat to be with you anytime, and especially in this situation. Thank you for having me here as your guest, and it's made my heart very happy today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.